Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today we are going to discuss a very important disease of the larynx, that is carcinoma of the larynx. First, the epidemiology. Carcinoma of the larynx or laryngeal cancer constitutes about 2.75% of all body cancers in the subcontinent, including Pakistan and India. It is 10 times more common in males than females. Mostly, the age group of 40 to 70 years is affected by this disease. First, the sides and subsides of the larynx. The sides of the larynx are supraglottis, glottis, and subglottis. The various subsides of supraglottis are suprahyoid epiglottis, infrahyoid epiglottis, ariepiglottic folds, arytenoids, ventricular bands, also known as false vocal cords. All these structures, they constitute the supraglottis. The glottis consists of two vocal cords and anterior and posterior commissure plus rima glottis. The subglottis consists of subglottic space up to lower border of the cricoid cartilage. So these are the sides and subsides of the larynx. This is coronal section of the larynx showing all these three sides and then different subsides of the larynx as well. Site incidence of laryngeal cancer. As I have said, the laryngeal cancer can occur on the supraglottic cancer, in the supraglottic structures. It may appear on the glottic, subglottic, and sometimes it may involve all the three sides of the larynx. The supraglottic cancer constitutes about 40%. The glottic region constitutes around about 50 to 60%, whereas subglottic constitutes about 2 to 3%. It is less than 5% in all. So in this way, if we consider this side incidence, then we come to know that glottic cancer is the commonest variety. Supraglottic cancer is less common as compared to glottic cancer, and subglottic cancer is the least common. Etiology of laryngeal cancer. Exact etiology is not known, but there are certain risk factors which may be responsible for cancer formation in the larynx. These are smoking, then alcohol intake. Both these risk factors have synergistic effect upon each other. Both increase the risk 15 folds compared to each other alone. Cigarette smoke is having benzopyrene and other hydrocarbons having carcinogenic effect. Similarly, hereditary predisposition, herpes simplex infection of the larynx, laryngoceles, although incidence is variable, it may range from 4.8% to 28.8%. Similarly, exposure to ionizing radiation such as radioactive iodine for thyroid cancer or radiotherapy to neck for some other malignant growth. Exposure to organic and chemical compounds, for example, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons and nitrosamines. Then exposure to environmental factors such as steam, heat inhalation, and thermal burns. Similarly, chronic laryngitis may be a risk factor for laryngeal cancer. Pathology. As I have said, 95 to 98% of the cases, they belong to squamous cell carcinoma, and only 2 to 5% they constitute other malignancy of the larynx. These other malignant tumors may include adenocarcinoma, verrucous carcinoma, adenoid cystic carcinoma, oral carcinoma, fibrosarcoma, chondrosarcoma, and lymphoma. Gross appearance of the laryngeal cancer. In supraglottic cancer, the growth may be exophytic, it may be ulcerative, and sometimes it may be infiltrative. Spread of the supraglottic cancer. The supraglottic growth may spread through number one, local spread through tissue continuity. So by this way, it can involve vallicula, base of the tongue, pyriform fossa, pre-epiglottic space, and thyroid cartilage. Second, lymph node metastasis. Early, this metastasis may occur early and occurs in upper and middle jugular lymph nodes. And the third one is the blood-borne spread. The laryngeal cancer from supraglottic region may metastasize to the lungs, liver, brain, and bone. Now you can see this is a photograph having a huge fungating growth of the supraglottic region of the larynx. This is the axial view of the glottic part of the larynx showing supraglottic carcinoma. This is a big growth, big growth. Similarly, this is another big growth of the supraglottic part of the larynx. Glottic cancer. The glottic cancer may having appearance just like irregular thickening of the vocal cord, but in majority of the patients we see exophytic growth and sometimes ulcerative growth as well. It may spread from its local site of the lesion. The growth can spread to the anterior commissure, opposite cord, vocal process, arytenoid region, subglottic region, and ventricle of the larynx. Lymph node metastasis in glottic cancer is not there because no lymph node metastasis, because no lymphatics. If patient presents with lymph node metastasis, then it means that the growth has extended beyond the glottic region. The third mode of metastasis is the blood-borne metastasis, lungs, liver, brain, and bones. This is the growth, fungating growth involving the two vocal cords. And you can see it has also involved the anterior commissure. And then it has also extended to the opposite vocal cord. This is again another fungating growth involving the two vocal cords. A huge vocal cord growth involving the two vocal cords. This is the glottic cancer. The true vocal cord is showing a nodular irregularity. This is another glottic cancer. This one, glottic cancer. The third is the subglottic cancer. The subaortic cancer may have exophytic appearance, it may be ulcerative, and sometimes it may be infiltrative type of cancer. Spread is again local spread, lymph node metastasis, and blood-borne spread. Local spread within the lumen to other walls of the subaortic region, trachea, and vocal cords, whereas lymph node metastasis is to the prelaryngeal, pretracheal, paratracheal, and lower jugular lymph nodes, and the blood-borne spread is to the lungs, liver, brain, and bones. You can see these are the two vocal cords, and below the two vocal cords, this is a fungating growth in the subglottic region. So this is a subglottic growth. Now this is carcinoma growth of the two vocal cords with subglottic extension. You can see the growth has also destroyed or eroded the two vocal cords as well. And after erosion of the this cartilage, thyroid cartilage, it has gone beyond the boundaries of the larynx. It is outside the larynx. Here you can see the black arrows. They are showing the growth, and this asterisk is showing the narrow airway as well. This is the carcinoma of the right two vocal cords with subglottic extension, and it also showing destruction of the thyroid as well. Clinical features. Clinical features of the laryngeal cancer depend upon the site of the cancer and its spread. First, supraglottic cancer. Often, the growth in the supraglottic cancer remains silent due to roomy place. However, the patient may present with throat pain sometimes, and sometimes he may be having dysphagia, he may have Rayford otalgia, and hoarseness is seen when extension to the glottic region is there. The patient may have weight loss, sometimes he may be having mass of lymph nodes in the neck due to lymph node metastasis. Patient may have respiratory obstruction and halitosis as well. In glottic cancer, hoarseness of voice is an early feature, and that's why the glottic cancer is detected early as compared to the supraglottic cancer. The patient may present with respiratory difficulty and stridor sometimes due to increase in the size of the growth and accompanying edema. In subglottic cancer, the patient usually presents with respiratory difficulty and stridor as well. Sometimes he may be having hoarseness as well. When the patient having subglottic cancer with hoarseness, it means the patient's growth has extended to involve the vocal cord. Causes of hoarseness in a laryngeal cancer. Number one cause is the extension of the growth to the glottic region from above or from below. Second, extension of the growth to thyroarytenoid muscle, or number three, involvement of the retrolaryngeal nerve at cricoarytenoid joint. Diagnosis of laryngeal cancer. Laryngeal cancer can be diagnosed by number one, history, which includes history of clinical features and risk factors. Number two, physical examination of the larynx. Number three, investigations. Physical examination includes examination of the larynx, which is very important. It includes external examination of the larynx, indirect laryngoscopic examination, and endoscopic examination, which is which may be fiber optic laryngoscopy and rigid direct laryngoscopy and biopsy of the lesion, which will confirm the diagnosis. Second, examination of the neck, especially for neck lymph nodes. Then general examination of the patient, examination of the ear, nose, and throat, and systemic examination of the patient, especially lungs, liver, bones, and brain. The investigations for laryngeal cancer include CBC with ESR, urine albumin and sugar, blood urea sugar and serum creatinine, serum electrolytes, liver function tests, and ECG. All these investigations are baseline and to see the fitness of the patient for surgical intervention if required. Then radiological investigations, these are very, very important. For example, X-ray chest, post-anterior view, X-ray soft tissue neck, lateral view, high resolution CT scan of head and neck to see the site of the tumor, to note the extent of the tumor, bone erosion, cartilage erosion, and lymph node involvement. Similarly, magnetic resonance imaging, again to see soft tissue shadow, lymph node involvement, and brain involvement. And then PET scan, positron emission tomography. Again, this is a very important investigation to especially to see the recurrence of the disease. Then direct laryngoscopy and biopsy. This is needed to diagnose the malignancy and to know the type of the carcinoma, whether it is squamous cell carcinoma or it is adenocarcinoma or some other type of malignancy. And then to know its differentiation, whether it is well differentiated, moderately differentiated, poorly differentiated, or anaplastic type of squamous cell carcinoma. The last one is the ultrasonography for laryngeal framework and to see any abdominal distant metastasis. Then tumor markers. They are increased in head and neck cancer, including laryngeal cancer. They are not specific for laryngeal cancer. These tumor markers are beta-2 microglobulin, trace elements such as copper and zinc. Copper is increased while zinc is decreased in laryngeal cancer and other head and neck cancers. Similarly, glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase and serum carcinoembryonic antigen. All these, they are the tumor markers which have a role in head and neck cancer, including the laryngeal cancer diagnosis. Treatment. Treatment of laryngeal cancer depends upon site of the lesion, extent of the lesion, lymph node metastasis present or not, and distant metastasis present or not. Different modalities of treatment to treat laryngeal cancer are: number one, radiotherapy; number two, surgery. The surgery may be conservative laryngeal surgery and total laryngectomy. The third mode of treatment is the chemotherapy. The fourth one is the combined therapy. For example, surgery and radiotherapy and chemotherapy, and combination of these three modalities. The last one is the endoscopic carbon dioxide laser (CA). Strategy of treatment for laryngeal cancer. Earlier the lesion, then treat the lesion by conservative modality. For example, radiotherapy, chemotherapy, or chemoradiotherapy to retain the function of the organ. This is the most important factor to be kept in mind in treating the laryngeal cancer. Surgery, especially total laryngectomy, is reserved for recurrent lesion and for advanced lesion. If lymph node metastases are found, then radical neck dissection is also combined along with surgical treatment for the laryngeal cancer. Now we discuss the total laryngectomy in some detail. What is a total laryngectomy? Total laryngectomy is done when the cancer of the larynx is at advanced stage. Total laryngectomy includes removal of the epiglottis, thyroid cartilage, hyoid bone, cricoid cartilage, and 3 or 4 rings of the trachea. The pharyngeal opening to the trachea is closed, and the remainder part of the trachea is brought out to the neck room and sutured to the skin to form a permanent tracheostomy through which the patient breathes. These days, total laryngectomy is not preferred because organ preservation is the order of the day. Secondly, partial laryngectomy and near total laryngectomy are commonly performed. And permanent tracheostomy is avoided if total laryngectomy is not performed. Indications of total laryngectomy. Number one, advanced laryngeal malignancies with extensive cartilage destruction and extralaryngeal spread. Similarly, involvement of posterior commissure and both arytenoids. Circumferential submucosal disease with or without vocal cord paralysis. Similarly, subglottic extension involves the cricoid cartilage. Completion procedure after failed partial laryngectomy or radiotherapy. Hypopharyngeal tumors originating or spreading to the post-cricoid area. Radiation necrosis of the larynx unresponsive to antibiotics and hyperbaric oxygen therapy. Similarly, severe aspiration following partial or near total laryngectomy and massive nodal metastasis. All these are the indications of total laryngectomy. Selection criteria for total laryngectomy. Patient should be fit for general anesthesia. Patient should be motivated for post-surgical life. Similarly, hands and fingers of the patient should be dexterous since handling of the tracheostomy tubes need to be done on a daily basis. The patient should have positive biopsy. Screening for metastasis should also be done before surgical procedure. Similarly, second primary to be ruled out in all these cases needing total laryngectomy. Airway assessment of the patient having laryngeal cancer or needing for total laryngectomy. Patients with stridor should undergo preliminary tracheostomy under local anesthesia. Skin incision should be sited at the level of the future permanent tracheostome. And then bipedical skin bridge between the skin flap and tracheostomy site should be avoided. Position of the patient during total laryngectomy. The patient should lie supine with mild extension of the neck. This extension of the neck may be done by placing a pillow under the shoulders, just like when we perform tracheostomy. Similarly, Royal's tube should be inserted prior to surgery because in the post-operative period, the patient will need nasogastric feeding for at least 2 to 3 weeks period. Insulin choice. It will depend upon whether the patient has been irradiated or not, whether the block neck dissection has been planned along with total lumpectomy or not. Types of incisions. There are different types of incisions which may be employed for total lumpectomy. These are: number one is the Gluck-Sorensen incision. This is the most commonly employed incision for total lumpectomy. Similarly, vertical incision, double horizontal incision, trial Y-type Y incision, and low neck horizontal incision. All these are different types of incisions which may be used for total lumpectomy. But anyhow, Gluck-Sorensen is the most commonly employed incision for total lumpectomy. Gluck-Sorensen incision. It is a U-shaped incision. Stoma is incorporated into the incision. Vertical limb is situated just medial to the medial border of the sternocleidomastoid muscle. Highest limit is the mastoid process on both sides. Horizontal limb encircles the tracheostoma. Now this is the Gluck-Sorensen incision. You can see this is a U-shaped incision in front of the neck. This is the larynx. These are the upper tracheal rings. Now you can see there are two extra incisions. These incisions may be made for block dissection of the lymph nodes if required. If this neck dissection is not required, then just simple U-shaped incision, that is called the Gluck-Sorensen incision, is the sufficient one to expose the larynx well for total lumpectomy. Advantage of Gluck-Sorensen incision. It provides good exposure of the larynx. 3-point junction is avoided. Pharyngeal mucosa line is entirely within the apron flap. Since the plane of elevation is subplatysmal, therefore the vascularity of the flap is not compromised. So the healing is very good in this Gluck-Sorensen incision. Steps of operation of total lumpectomy. Number one, as I have said, position, then incision, then raising of the flap or flap elevation. After this, flap are sutured above and below, then division of the strap muscles, hemithyroidectomy or total thyroidectomy depending upon the laryngeal cancer, then suprahyoid dissection. After this, the step is skeletonization of the larynx, then delivery of the epiglottis, head and dissection, removal of the larynx, then pharyngeal cuts. After this, the pharyngeal closure, then comes the suture, Cornell's suture, then T-shaped closure of the pharynx, putting the drain to prevent hematoma formation, and lastly the skin flap closure. In this way, all these are the detailed steps of total lumpectomy. However, the details is not being given to avoid the confusion. Anyhow, these are the different steps of total lumpectomy. Complications of total lumpectomy. The important complications are brain failure, hematoma formation, skin flap infection, pharyngocutaneous fistula, which usually occurs after second week, and it is common in irradiated patients. Then the patient may develop flap necrosis. Tracheal stenosis may develop in these patients. Esophageal stenosis may develop, and sometimes hypothyroidism or hypoparathyroidism may develop in these patients, in which the patient's thyroid or parathyroid glands, they are, if removed from the patient during total laryngectomy, the patient may develop these complications. After total laryngectomy, the patient will need some sort of voice rehabilitation. Loss of speech after total laryngectomy can be rehabilitated by certain methods of communication. For example, written language by using pen and paper, euphonic lip speech, which is accomplished by trapping air in the buccal cavity, sign language, esophageal speech, artificial larynx such as electrolarynx, transoral pneumatic device. Similarly, tracheoesophageal speech by using Blomsinger prosthesis and Pange prosthesis. This is photograph of an electrolarynx. How it can be used? It can be used like this. This is battery operated electrolarynx placed against the upper part of the neck. Now you can see this is the tracheostome after total laryngectomy. This is the trachea. Then this is the esophagus. And this working electrolarynx, when it is in contact with the skin of the neck, it will produce vibrations, and these vibrations, they are then converted into speech with the help of tongue, teeth, gums, and so on and so forth. So this is how the electrolarynx works. Thank you very much.